WADR.org. First, our top stories. Senegalese opposition politician Ousmane Sonko predicts chaos if denied his candidacy in the 2024 presidential elections. Amnesty International calls on Ghana's parliament to withdraw the adopted anti-LGBTQ+ bill. And lawmakers in Liberia raise alarm over the influx of foreigners who engage in illegal mining and cultivation of forests.
Free movement does not constitute free settlement. We should not intellectualize something that will create a long-term problem for our people. Either the government take the action or we will take our own course.
United Nations reports a 112% increase in rights violations and abuses perpetrated against children in armed conflict this year compared to 2022. Stay with us for details of these stories and more.
Here is Abdullahi Hassan with Newslink.
Many thanks for staying tuned. We begin in Senegal with the latest reaction from opposition politician Ousmane Sonko, who threatens chaos should he be denied his candidacy in the 2024 presidential elections. The statement by the leader of the PASTEF follows the national address on Monday by the incumbent Macky Sall, in which he declared his non-candidacy. Sonko, in an interview with France 24 on Thursday, reacted to President Sall's speech that called on the population to shun violence and embrace peace, but most importantly, preserve the nation's democracy. Taufik Abdenaz reports.
In this interview, the leader of PASTEF comments on President Macky Sall's failure to stand as a candidate, which he sees as a non-event. He insists instead on the transparency of the 2024 presidential election.
So far, the people of Senegal have risen up. Have they risen up against the third candidacy? No, they have risen up against the persecution of the opponent Ousmane Sonko. What the Senegalese people are demanding today is free, transparent and inclusive elections so that they can freely choose their president.
Ousmane Sonko, who has been convicted, says there can be no presidential election without a candidate.
President Macky Sall has told some people that he will prevent my candidacy come what may because he is the republic, he is the judiciary, he is the constitutional council, and it is up to him to say who will be a candidate and who will not. And I can assure you that there will be no elections in this country or else.
The opposition politician is still being held up at home by the police following his sentencing after being charged with corrupting youth. The ruling stemmed from years of legal showdown in the case filed against him by a massage parlor employee, Arjun Sar.
Taufik Abdenaz reporting there. Meanwhile, the coalition of movement of the forces of the nation, known as F-24, demanded the release of political detainees and the removal of barriers hindering the eligibility of certain candidates in the forthcoming presidential election. Speaking at a media briefing on Thursday in Dakar, the coordinator of the group, Mamadou Mboj, called for the removal of the blockade at the home of opposition politician Ousmane Sonko and the creation of an independent commission of inquiry into the deadly violence of last June. According to the movement, almost 700 people arrested during recent opposition demonstrations are currently being held. Recall, the prosecutor of the tribunal, the Grand Instance of Dakar, announced in mid-June the arrest of 410 people during opposition demonstrations. The F-24, which is made up of political groups and civil society organizations, is calling for inclusive, transparent, and peaceful presidential election in 2024. Away from Senegal, the Gambia is taking further steps to consolidate its democratic process as the European Union and International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance launch a joint project called EU Support to the Consolidation of Democratic Dispensation in the Gambia, EU Code, and implemented by International IDEA. The project will provide technical assistance to relevant institutions, including the Parliament and the Human Rights Commission. Our Banjul correspondent Sankule Janko reports.
The project aims to support a participatory, inclusive and human rights-based democratic transition in the Gambia, to establish a sustainable democracy, good governance, and to promote peace and security. The project aims to focus on three key areas, which includes providing a technical support to the staff of the National Assembly and also to the National Human Rights Commission, as well as assist and develop the capacity of the Gambia Press Union. the EU ambassador and head of delegation to the Gambia, Karodo Pampanoli, reiterated the bloc's support for the Gambia's democratic process.
Code is a renewed testimony of our commitment to fostering democracy institutions and principles in the Gambia. Our goal as a partner is to accompany the Gambia in its transition to a solid democratic governance that is benefiting all its citizens.
Meanwhile, the Speaker of the Parliament, Fabakary Tombonjata, applauded the project, noting its importance in the discharge of duties by lawmakers.
This project intervention to support our role as parliamentarians will usher in numerous opportunities that would strengthen the institutional capacity of the National Assembly to undertake legislative and policy review. The project will, amongst others, strengthen the Assembly's mandate to public scrutiny, legislation, and monitoring of government's excesses and conduct in governance.
The European Union has been Gambia's biggest financial supporter since the transition from dictatorship to democracy in 2017. Funded by the EU, the project is equally supported by the International IDEA, which has been instrumental in the Gambia's transitional justice, mediation, and peaceful advocacy among political parties. For News Link on West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Sam Kulishenko reporting from Banjul.
Elsewhere, the European Union head of diplomacy is rounding up his official visit to Niger after holding several meetings with stakeholders on topical issues. On Thursday, Joseph Borrell hosted representatives from Agadez, a troubled region both on the security and migration front, on issues relating to aid. Borrell's visit to the Sahelian state comes as the UN peacekeeping mission in Mali finalizes an agreement with transitional authorities for its departure. Ogebirika reports.
The European Union head of foreign diplomacy, Borrell, arrived in the country this week and met with President Mohamed Bazoum, top government officials, civil society groups, the diplomatic community, and stakeholders on different but all interconnected issues. On his agenda, however, were two key issues: security and migration, both challenges that Niger faces. As the center of discussions with Bazoum, the EU chief diplomat raised several political and security concerns, particularly as the bloc seeks to stabilize the country and make it the future of the Sahel. Being a major transit route, Niger struggles with the influx of sub-Saharan migrants who attempt to journey to Europe in search of better economic opportunities. This trend has further weakened the country's fragile security along its shared borders where armed groups, including Boko Haram and IS, frequent attacks. Joseph Borrell says they recognize Niger's role, regardless, in controlling the flow of migration to Europe, which has strained the nation's economy, a crisis the EU chief assures to remedy.
Le Niger est un partenaire solide, fiable.
Niger is a solid, reliable partner, both politically and in terms of security. We support President Bazoum enormously with all our strength. We support his regional vision and his vision of economic development, which combines security with growth and education.
He hailed Bazoum as a champion in the Sahel, adding that Niger will be the first African country to benefit from the facility funds. The approved 320 million euros will enable the country to equip the defense and security forces and improve its operational capacity. As he winds up, Joseph Borrell, alongside President Mohamed Bazoum, inaugurated a 30-megawatt solar power plant in Niamey, which will supply electricity to nearly 500,000 people.
Ogebirika reporting there.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Amnesty International has called for the immediate withdrawal of the proposed Promotion of Proper Human Sexual Rights and Ghanaian Family Values Bill 2021, which has passed the first stage of the parliamentary process. The objective of the bill is to promote what its sponsors call proper human sexual rights and Ghanaian family values proscribe lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, LGBTQ+, and related activities. The human rights group believes the bill contravenes the principles of equality and non-discrimination, the rights to freedom of expression, association and privacy, and the prohibition of torture enshrined in Ghana's constitution. But as our correspondent in Accra reports, Bila Lawson, legislators disagree.
On Wednesday night, Ghana's parliament unanimously adopted the Promotion of Proper Human Sexual Rights and Ghanaian Family Values Bill 2022. Among the provisions of the bill are 3 to 5 years of imprisonment for engaging in same-sex intercourse, 5 to 10 years of imprisonment for anyone who produces, procures, or distributes materials deemed to be promoting LGBTQ+ activities, and a requirement for citizens and institutions to promote and protect proper human sexual rights and Ghanaian family values. Reacting to the news of the overwhelming acceptance of the bill by both sides of the divide, Genevieve Partington, the country director for Amnesty International, believes the passage of the bill will be discriminatory and infringe on the rights of people.
Our MPs are sworn into office with the mandate of protecting the rights of citizens. And this bill, if it comes into law, is infringing on the rights of a specific group of citizens.
Since passing the first stage of parliamentary approval, the bill now moves to the consideration stage, after which it will go through a third reading before it is passed into law. Kwame Anyemedu Entry is the chairman for the Committee on Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs of Parliament. He explains further.
So the second reading is when we talk about the principles governing the bill. Now, the normal circumstance, it will be for and against. But here we didn't get any person dissenting on the proposed bill. And so we're going to look at the amendments that we have made.
On his part, a key proponent of the bill, Sam George, is confident that the bill will pass the parliamentary hurdles and become law.
We're pretty confident that the consideration stage shouldn't take more than 48 hours as a max, because the majority of the proposed amendments are objects of agreement between us as sponsors and the committee. I'd say about 95% of the amendments. So very little room for debate when it comes to the amendment. We should be able to pull through within 2 days, barring any filibustering attempt on the floor of the House.
Reporting for Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I am Atiewin Imbila Lawson in Accra.
More on parliamentary matters. Senators in Liberia are alarmed over the unrestricted influx of Burkinabe in the southeastern district of the country. Recently, reports emerged in the country about the reported increase in the number of foreigners occupying a portion of the forest in the southeast. WADR's Daniton Popa in Monrovia attended the Senate session and now reports.
The situation was brought before the Liberian Senate by Riverside County Senator Wellington Jeevon Smith, who alleged that the Burkinabes are involved in the illegal mining and cultivation of the forest in the region. He threatens to take unspecified actions should the government fail to act immediately.
Free movement does not constitute free settlement. We should not intellectualize something that will create a long-term problem for our people. Can any group of Liberians get up from here and go and live in any part of Ghana because they are ECOWAS citizens without proper documentation? The lands that they are occupying today, 5, 10, 15 years from now, will you be able to take them from there again? We are telling the Liberian Senate that Riverside will not. Either the government take the action or we will take our own course.
Before Senator Jeevon Smith's call during plenary, community members of the affected region have similar calls to relevant authorities, including the police and the Liberia Immigration Service, to take necessary action. He says, to date, no security measures has been instituted to neither protect the forest and its resources nor calm the residents. However, another Senator, Steve Zago, says the arrival of the Burkinabes is in line with the ECOWAS free movement of citizens.
Many of the Burkinabe come into Liberia via Grand Juillet through La Côte d'Ivoire. It's because of relationship. So we need to be a little bit cautious so we can raise an alarm that we may not be able to control. Unless the contrary is proven, then we all can zoom into it again and then maybe raise our antennas and then have our security architecture to see if there's a need.
The Senate has in the meantime constituted a specialized committee to probe the matter. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Darlington Popa in Monrovia.
You are listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Senegalese opposition politician Ousmane Sonko predicts chaos if denied his candidacy in the 2024 presidential elections. Amnesty International calls on Ghana's parliament to withdraw the adopted anti-LGBTQ+ bill. Lawmakers in Liberia raise alarm over the influx of foreigners who engage in illegal mining and cultivation of forest. Still ahead in the news, farmers and researchers in West Africa to strategize on measures to protect cotton fields against pests. And United Nations reports a 112% increase in rights violations and abuses perpetrated against children in armed conflict this year compared to 2022, plus the guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio.
Remember, we are streaming live on WADR.org and on YouTube, WADR News. In West Africa, agricultural researchers are organizing the fight against the cotton jassid. This devastating insect, which has recently appeared in fields, is giving producers and government a hard time. At the end of a 3-day meeting that just ended in Cotonou, the Beninese capital, the researchers working on the issue promised to rapidly draw up a plan to combat the pest. Imo Edit has more.
The situation in the cotton fields of West Africa is serious. For several months now, the cotton jassid, a new insect pest from Asia, has been wreaking havoc, including on fields in Burkina Faso, one of the main producers of cotton in West Africa. The insect left its mark there last season. Sou Sibiri is a member of the Association Cotton Farmers of Burkina Faso.
We have estimated a 25% crop loss, which in monetary terms represents a loss of nearly 63 billion CFA francs for Burkina Faso. And farmers have said that until we find a solution, they will stop growing cotton.
Like Burkina Faso, farmers in the region also suffered huge losses last season, and the jassid is not confined to cotton plants. As Hippolyte Afongnon, program coordinator at the regional office of the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization FAO based in Dakar, Senegal, explains, the jassid's voracious appetite also takes it to market garden areas.
It can also attack other plants such as okra, tomatoes, and sorrel.
During the last agricultural season, the devastating insect caused enormous damage, and each country organized itself in its own way. But now the FAO wants to harmonize the fight. The researchers who met for 3 days in Cotonou left with the mission of drawing up a control manual as soon as possible. In addition to the newly arrived cotton jassid, which has given the rural world a hard time, participants at the Cotonou meeting reviewed the fight already being waged for years against other pests such as the papaya mealybug and the armyworm, which attacks maize fields the most.
Imo Edit filed that report. Now, the United Nations says killing, recruitment, and abduction of children remain the most committed violations suffered by many in armed conflict situations. Rape and sexual gender-based violence are mostly perpetrated against girls, while the forced closure of schools and hospitals has denied millions the right to quality life. In 2022 alone, there were 27,800 verified violations against 18,000 children, representing a staggering 112% increase compared to the previous year, with half of these perpetrated by government forces. Here is Virginia Gamba, the special representative of the UN Secretary General for Children and Armed Conflict, who delivered a briefing to the UN Security Council.
27,180 grave violations against 18,890 children were verified by the United Nations last year. These include 2,880 violations that were late verified. 8,630 children were either killed or maimed, 7,622 children were recruited and used, and 3,985 children were abducted. These 3 violations remain the ones verified at the highest level, and all of them increased in 2022. Children were killed or injured in airstrikes, by explosive weapons, by live ammunition, in crossfire, or in direct attacks. Rape and sexual violence against children, although chronically underreported, was also verified at high levels. 1,165 children, almost all of them girls, were raped, gang raped, forced into marriage or sexual slavery, or sexually assaulted. Some cases were so severe that they resulted in the death of the victims. The crimes committed against these children are horrifying. Overall, the United Nations verified attacks on 1,163 schools and 647 hospitals. This represents a 112% increase compared to the year before. 50% of these attacks were perpetrated by government forces.
Politics, analyses on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Our guest this afternoon is a governance expert who shares his insight on Thursday's comment by Senegalese opposition politician Ousmane Sonko, in which he predicted chaos should he be denied the right to participate in the 2024 elections. Ibrahim Akan begins with the perceived reason for the threat and possible solutions going forward.
Saying that you need to understand that after the decision of the president not to run for a third term, a new situation has been created in the country because the third term issue was really a mobilizing agenda for the whole opposition. Mobilizing agenda that really, put on the street many people. The fact that the president decided not to go for a third term has already appeased, if I can say, the majority of people who were really mobilized the last 10 to 12 months. Now, in addition, the fact that the president also decided to organize a meeting at the presidential palace to discuss the future of the democracy has already divided the opposition. There are people who decided to go for that conversation and those who decided not to go for that conversation, which includes Sonko. Because he had also his argument, people were arrested, there are people who died and we don't know why they died. So for Sonko today, he needs to be vocal, he needs to really explain to the population that he's still alive and that he still wants to compete for the election.
Sonko's case is quite legal, even though he blames the government for a bit of political maneuver here and there. At this point also, what should have been the main focus for Sonko?
Yes, but when there is a case against a politician, it's also, it's not only legal, but it's also political. And Abdoulaye Wade has shown us that any legal action against a political activist is always a political action, and that if you want to sort it out, you need to sort it out politically. So I think he still believes that he can use the street against the state for not to be arrested. But the question remains about his participation. And I think for me, his participation to the election needs to be negotiated. But negotiated in the way, not, violence on the street, but use the mechanism that exists in the Senegalese society.
There is this section of intellectuals that have, quietly debated or argued that the spotlight is on Sonko and is almost not ready to manage the spotlight, which is why he has issued this threat.
I think he's very young in politics, despite the fact that he was elected twice at the parliament. I think he needs to learn a lot of things about political action. If you look at even some of the cases that were filed against him, who may be preventing him from participating, those cases should have been avoided. You understand? If you had, saying somebody is a crook and you have evidence, and when you are asked to present those evidence, you don't have those evidence, I think it's not good for a political actor to behave like that. So I think, and the fact that many intellectuals said Sonko is not ready for the presidency, have also some arguments. But you also learn in the political arena, learn and think. He's learning, in my view, a lot of things these days, and that may be preparing him for a future position in the state. But so far, has done a lot of mistakes, and those are the mistakes that put him in a very, very difficult situation. situation, despite the fact that Sonko is one of the leaders who are most popular in the Senegalese political history.
My last question was if you see any possible rift in the opposition coalition already because of the proposed electoral amendments that will allow convicted politicians to run the race in 2024.
Even in the beginning of the coalition of the opposition that led to their success to the local and legislative election, people said it clearly at the beginning that they were in coalition just for local and legislative, but for the presidential, they will go, each of them, for their own agenda.
It's now time for sports news. Let's turn Sankule Janko.
Hello there, a warm welcome and thank you for joining us. Oklahoma City Thunder NBA have signed 31-year-old former American-Nigerian international 6'4" guard Victor Oladipo for the new season. This will be Oladipo's second stint with Oklahoma, following his previous stint with the club. The player joined the City Thunder from Miami Heat, where he played the last 2 seasons. In 2013, Orlando Magic voted him as his second overall pick in the NBA draft. The former Indiana University standout is in his 11th season in the NBA, according to media reports. Elsewhere, Betleague Elite Pro A have signed 28-year-old Nigeria ex-international center John Egbuno for the upcoming 2023-24 season. Egbuno is the second import player in the roster after the acquisition of Senegalese Mbanjai. The Nigerian international joined from Gaziantep basketball in Turkey's BSL League. Egbuno was pivotal to the Turkish side as he helped them to win the regular season and make it to the final. He also played 10 games in the FIBA Europe Cup, helping his team to reach the quarterfinals. He was a member of the Nigeria senior national team in 2020. And Philadelphia 76ers agreed terms with 25-year-old naturalized Ivorian center Mohamed Bamba for the new 23-24 season, according to reports. Bamba joined the 76ers from LA Lakers, where he played last season. Bamba opted to represent the USA at the FIBA Americas Championship Under 18 in Valdivia, Chile, 7 years ago. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
And that's how we wrap up this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to our listeners in the Gambia via Hot 104.3 FM Banjul, and in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM Lufa County, and in Ghana on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi. Many thanks to Christian Mukiri for the technical support, Amaldo Juve on the social media feed. Do interact with us via social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, on Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio, English service, and stream live on WADR.org. Or still, go to Google Play Store today to download our mobile app, WADR. I'm Abdullahi Hassan. Good afternoon.
News.